Maya Johnson thought she had every crisis under control until a single expired prescription at 2 a.m. turned her carefully managed world into a desperate nightmare that would lead a dangerous Korean mafia enforcer directly to her door. At 23, she had mastered the exhausting mathematics of survival, but some equations had no solution except accepting help from the most dangerous source imaginable. Maya Johnson balanced 3 jobs like a professional juggler who knew that dropping even one meant catastrophe. At 23, she moved through her days with the precise efficiency of someone who had calculated every minute and every dollar. Nursing school at City College consumed her mornings. The afternoon shift at Riverside General as a certified nursing assistant paid her tuition. Evening hours at Mercy Hospital cleaning surgical instruments covered rent and groceries. Her natural hair, twisted into a practical bun, caught the fluorescent lights of whichever medical facility claimed her time that day. She was steady, focused, and absolutely determined to become a registered nurse by next spring. Her grandmother's diabetes had been manageable for 3 years. The routine was sacred. Test blood sugar twice daily, insulin injection before meals, medication picked up every 2 weeks like clockwork. Maya had created a system that accounted for every variable except the one that would shatter everything at 2:17 a.m. on a Tuesday night. She stood in her grandmother's small bedroom, holding the insulin pen that should have solved the crisis. The expiration date stared back at her like a cruel joke. March 2023. It was now November 2024. 8 months past expiration. Her grandmother's blood sugar reading showed 340, dangerously high, and the nearest 24-hour pharmacy was 40 minutes away in a car that Maya didn't own. Her hands trembled as she calculated impossible options. Taxi fare would cost $60 she didn't have. Her cousin Marcus lived 20 minutes closer but had ignored her calls for 3 days. Her bank account showed $47.82. Payday wasn't until Friday. Her grandmother's breathing had become shallow, labored, and Maya recognized the signs of diabetic ketoacidosis from her clinical training. She grabbed her phone with desperate fingers and scrolled to Marcus's number. He had to answer. He had to help. Her grandmother had raised them both when their parents died. He owed her this much. Maya typed quickly, her fingers shaking with exhaustion and fear. Marcus, I know you're mad about last week, but Grandma's in crisis. Blood sugar 340 and insulin expired. Need $100 for emergency prescription and taxi to 24-hour pharmacy. She could go into coma. Please help me. I'll pay back Friday with interest. She hit send and waited. The phone sat silent in her palm while her grandmother's breathing grew more labored. 1 minute. 5 minutes. 10 minutes. No response. Maya stared at the phone, desperation clawing at her chest. She had to do something. She had to try everything. Without thinking, she hit redial on what she thought was Marcus's number and typed another message. I'm begging you. It's Grandma. The woman who taught you to tie your shoes and made you birthday cakes when Mama couldn't afford them. She raised us both. Don't let her die because you're angry at me. Please. Just this once. The message sent with a small whoosh sound that seemed too quiet for such a desperate plea. Maya set the phone aside and returned to her grandmother's bedside. The older woman's skin felt clammy and cold. Her pulse was rapid and weak. Maya had learned enough in nursing school to know that without insulin, her grandmother had maybe 6 hours before the situation became life-threatening. 20 minutes later, the phone buzzed with an incoming call. Maya lunged for it, expecting Marcus's familiar voice. Who is this? A man asked. His voice was deep, controlled, and completely unfamiliar. Maya's stomach dropped. Wrong number. She had somehow texted a stranger. I'm sorry, Maya whispered. I must have dialed wrong. I was trying to reach my cousin about a family emergency. What kind of emergency? The voice asked. Maya should have hung up. Every instinct told her to end the call and figure out another solution. But exhaustion and desperation made her honest. My grandmother's diabetic and her insulin expired. Her blood sugar is dangerously high and I don't have money for the pharmacy or transportation to get there. I'm sorry to bother you. I'll figure something else out. The line went quiet for long enough that Maya wondered if he had hung up. Then the voice returned, sharper now, more focused. What's your address? Maya's breath caught. No stranger asked for addresses at 2 a.m. This was dangerous. This was stupid. This was exactly the kind of mistake that got young women hurt or killed. I can't tell you that, she said quietly. I don't know who you are. My name is Hyunwoo Kim. I'm going to help your grandmother. What's your address? Something in his voice commanded obedience. Not aggressive, but absolute. Like someone accustomed to being obeyed without question. Maya found herself speaking before her rational mind could stop her. 1247, Maple Street, apartment 3B. Stay with your grandmother. Don't leave the apartment. I'll be there in 30 minutes. The line went dead. Maya stared at her phone, her heart hammering against her ribs. She had just given her address to a complete stranger in the middle of the night. She had potentially invited danger directly to her door while her grandmother lay helpless in the next room. This was insane. This was reckless. This was the worst decision she had ever made. But 37 minutes later, someone knocked on her door with the controlled authority of someone who was used to having doors opened for him. Maya approached the peephole with her heart in her throat. The man standing in her hallway was not what she had expected. He was Korean, probably mid-30s, wearing a dark wool coat that looked more expensive than her entire wardrobe. His features were sharp and controlled, the kind of face that gave nothing away. He carried a small medical bag in one hand and a pharmacy bag in the other. Maya opened the door with the chain still attached, peering through the gap. You're Hyunwoo Kim, she said. I am. This is insulin and a glucose meter. Let me in. His English was perfect, accented but precise. Everything about him radiated control and quiet authority. Maya's hands shook as she undid the chain and stepped aside. Hyunwoo Kim entered her small apartment, and his presence immediately changed the atmosphere. The space felt smaller, more cramped, as if his controlled intensity took up physical room. His dark eyes scanned the apartment quickly, professionally, taking in the worn furniture, the medical textbooks stacked on the kitchen table, the obvious signs of someone living carefully on very little money. Where is she? He asked. Maya led him to her grandmother's bedroom. The older woman was semi-conscious now, her breathing shallow and rapid. Hyunwoo Kim knelt beside the bed and opened the medical bag with efficient movements. You said you're in nursing school, he said without looking up. Test her blood sugar again. I want to see where we are now. Maya's hand still trembled as she used the new glucose meter. The reading showed 378. Higher than before. Hyunwoo Kim prepared an insulin injection with movements that spoke of medical training or extensive experience with emergencies. He administered the injection with gentle competence, then checked her grandmother's pulse and breathing. She needs 4 fluids, he said. The dehydration is significant. I'm going to start in 4 line. Maya watched in amazement as this stranger, this man whose name she had learned 40 minutes ago, provided professional medical care in her grandmother's bedroom at 3 a.m. His hands were steady and careful. His voice remained calm and reassuring even though her grandmother couldn't fully hear him. Who are you? Maya asked quietly. Really? Hyunwoo Kim glanced up from adjusting the 4 bag that had somehow materialized from his medical kit. Someone who lost his own grandmother because he wasn't there when she needed help, he said simply. This won't happen to yours. Over the next 2 hours, Maya watched her grandmother's breathing become steady and normal. Her blood sugar stabilized. Her color returned. The crisis passed with professional efficiency that Maya couldn't have managed alone. As dawn broke through the bedroom window, Hyunwoo Kim packed his medical supplies with the same controlled precision he had shown throughout the night. She'll be fine now, he said. But this can't happen again. Expired medication, no emergency funds, no transportation. You're one crisis away from losing her. Maya nodded, exhaustion and gratitude making her honest. I know. I work 3 jobs and go to school full-time, but it's never enough. There's always something. Rent, tuition, groceries, medications. I budget everything down to the last dollar, and it's still not enough. Hyunwoo Kim studied her face with dark, intelligent eyes that seemed to see everything. How much do you need? He asked. For what? To stop worrying about money. To ensure your grandmother gets proper medical care. To finish nursing school without working yourself to death. Maya stared at him. The question was so far outside her reality that she couldn't process it. I can't accept money from a stranger, she said finally. I don't know anything about you except that you saved my grandmother's life tonight. That's already more than I can ever repay. Hyunwoo Kim reached into his coat and pulled out a business card. Heavy paper, expensive printing, minimal text. Just his name and a phone number. Think about it, he said. When you're ready to stop struggling alone, Call me." He left as quietly as he had arrived, leaving behind medication, medical supplies, and a business card that felt warm between Maya's fingers. Maya sat beside her grandmother's bed as morning light filled the room, holding the card and trying to understand what had just happened. A stranger had appeared at her most desperate moment and solved an impossible crisis with calm efficiency. He had asked for nothing in return except that she consider accepting more help. She should throw the card away. She should pretend this night never happened. She should return to her carefully managed struggle and never contact the mysterious man who had materialized like an answer to a prayer she hadn't known how to pray. Instead, she slipped the card into her pocket and began calculating what it would mean to stop worrying about money. The number was so large it felt imaginary. But as she watched her grandmother sleep peacefully with professional fluids restoring her health, Maya wondered if impossible things might be possible after all. 3 days after the midnight crisis, Maya's grandmother developed complications that forced Maya to make the call she had been avoiding. Hyunwoo Kim answered on the first ring as if he had been waiting, and within an hour, Maya learned what real medical care looked like when money was no obstacle. Maya stood in her grandmother's bedroom Thursday morning, watching the older woman struggle with nausea and dizziness that had appeared overnight. The blood sugar readings remained stable, but something was wrong. Her grandmother's color was off, grayish and concerning. Her appetite had vanished. She complained of chest pain that made Maya's nursing training scream warnings. The emergency room would mean a 12-hour wait and a bill that would destroy Maya's carefully managed budget. Urgent care was faster, but still expensive. Her grandmother needed a doctor, not a nursing student's educated guesses. But Maya's next paycheck was 3 days away, and her bank account showed $31. Maya stared at the business card she had been carrying for 3 days. Heavy cardstock, elegant printing, just a name and number that represented help she didn't understand and couldn't afford to accept. Every rational thought told her to find another solution. Every instinct warned against trusting a stranger who had appeared too conveniently with too much help. But her grandmother's breathing was shallow and her pulse was irregular, and Maya's clinical training recognized signs that couldn't wait for pride or caution. She dialed the number. Hyunwoo Kim, the deep voice answered immediately. "This is Maya Johnson. From Tuesday night. My grandmother is having complications." "What kind of complications?" Maya described the symptoms with clinical precision, her nursing vocabulary making the conversation feel professional despite her racing heart. "I'm sending a doctor," Hyunwoo Kim said. "Dr. Sarah Chun, internal medicine specialist. She'll be there within the hour." "I can't pay for a house call from a specialist," Maya said quickly. "I barely have enough for the copay at urgent care." "Dr. Chun is already paid," Hyunwoo Kim replied. "Take care of your grandmother. I'll check on you both this evening." The line went dead before Maya could object. Dr. Sarah Chun arrived 57 minutes later with a medical bag that belonged in a hospital and the calm competence of someone accustomed to providing premium care. She was Asian American, probably 40, with intelligent eyes and expensive clothes that suggested a very successful practice. Dr. Chin spent 90 minutes with Maya's grandmother, running tests with equipment that she pulled from her bag like a medical magician. Blood work, EKG, urinalysis, chest X-ray with a portable machine that Maya had only seen in hospitals. Mild kidney dysfunction from the diabetic episode, Dr. Chun explained as she packed her equipment. Her body is still recovering from the crisis. I'm adjusting her medications and adding something for the nausea. She'll feel better within 24 hours. Dr. Chun left behind a week's worth of medications, follow-up instructions, and her direct phone number for any concerns. Maya sat beside her grandmother's bed, holding prescriptions that would have cost $200 at any pharmacy, wondering what kind of man had doctors on call for strangers. That evening, Hyunwoo Kim knocked on her door with the same controlled authority that had characterized his first visit. Maya opened the door with questions she didn't know how to ask. "How is she feeling?" he asked without preamble. "Much better. Dr. Chun was incredible. But I need to know what this cost and how I can repay you." Hyunwoo Kim stepped into her apartment, bringing with him the same quiet presence that made the space feel smaller and more charged. Tonight he wore a charcoal suit that probably cost more than Maya's monthly rent, but he moved through her cramped apartment without any sign that the contrast bothered him. "You don't repay kindness," he said simply. "You accept it and remember it." This isn't kindness, Maya replied, finding courage in her confusion. This is a specialist making house calls with hospital equipment. This is expensive help that strangers don't provide without expecting something in return. Hyunwoo Kim studied her face with those dark, intelligent eyes that seemed to see more than she wanted to reveal. What do you think I expect? He asked. Maya didn't know how to answer. Every warning her mother had given her about accepting help from men echoed in her mind. But this man had provided medical care for her grandmother without touching Maya or making inappropriate suggestions. His help had been professional, efficient, and strangely respectful. I don't know, she admitted. That's what scares me. Hyunwoo Kim moved to the small kitchen and began examining her refrigerator contents with matter-of-fact efficiency. Nearly empty. Bread, peanut butter, a few apples, leftover rice. When did you eat last? He asked. Maya couldn't remember. The crisis with her grandmother had consumed 2 days of worry and sleepless nights. Sit, Hyunwoo Kim said, not unkindly, but with the authority of someone accustomed to being obeyed. I'm ordering dinner. He pulled out an expensive phone and made a call in rapid Korean, speaking with the efficiency of someone managing details. Maya listened to the musical cadence of the language and tried to process the surreal reality of a well-dressed Korean man ordering takeout in her kitchen while her grandmother slept peacefully in the next room with medication he had provided. 25 minutes later, someone knocked on the door with enough food for 6 people. Korean barbecue, rice, vegetables, soup, and banchan that filled Maya's small kitchen table. The delivery person treated Hyunwoo Kim with obvious deference, bowing slightly before leaving. Maya stared at the feast that had materialized in her apartment. The smell alone made her stomach remind her that she had been surviving on peanut butter sandwiches and coffee for 3 days. This is too much, she said. Eat, Hyunwoo Kim replied, handing her a plate. We'll talk while you eat. Maya found herself following his direction, her body making decisions that her rational mind questioned. The food was incredible, rich and satisfying in ways that her usual diet of budget basics never achieved. She ate with the focused intensity of someone who had been hungrier than she realized. Tell me about your grandmother, Hyunwoo Kim said as she ate. Maya found herself talking about the woman who had raised her and her cousin after their parents died in a car accident. How her grandmother had worked double shifts at a textile factory to keep them fed and clothed. How she had insisted that education was the only path to a better life. How she had never complained about the sacrifices required to raise 2 children on a factory worker's salary. She sounds like my grandmother, Hyunwoo Kim said quietly. She raised me after my parents died when I was 8. Maya looked up from her food, hearing something in his voice that hadn't been there before. Softer, more vulnerable. What happened to your parents? She asked. Car accident, like yours. My grandmother was a seamstress who took in piecework to support us. She never remarried, never complained, never let me see her cry even though I know she did. Maya studied his face, seeing past the controlled expression to something that looked like grief. Where is she now? Maya asked. She died 5 years ago while I was traveling for business. Heart attack. I was in Tokyo closing deals and making money while she was alone in Seoul having chest pains. By the time I got back, she had been dead for 18 hours. The pain in his voice was carefully controlled but unmistakable. Maya felt her defenses soften as she recognized the guilt that she heard in his words. I'm sorry, she said. That's why I came Tuesday night, Hyunwoo Kim continued. I couldn't help my grandmother when she needed me, but I could help yours. Maya set down her chopsticks, feeling the conversation shift into territory that felt both dangerous and necessary. What kind of business requires travel to Tokyo? She asked. Hyunwoo Kim's phone buzzed before he could answer. He glanced at the screen, and Maya saw his expression change subtly. Sharper. More alert. I need to take this, he said, stepping toward the window. Kim speaking, he answered in English, then continued the conversation in rapid Korean. Maya couldn't understand the words, but she heard the tone change from conversational to commanding. This was not someone taking instructions. This was someone giving them. The call lasted 3 minutes. When Hyunwoo Kim returned to the table, the softer man who had talked about his grandmother was gone. In his place was someone harder, more controlled, with an edge that made Maya suddenly aware that she still knew nothing about who he really was. Business emergency, he said by way of explanation. I have to go. What kind of business? Maya asked again. Hyunwoo Kim studied her face for a long moment, as if deciding how much truth she could handle. Import and export, he said finally. Shipping and logistics. Sometimes problems arise that require immediate attention. Maya nodded, though she sensed that import and export didn't explain the deference of the delivery person or the way Hyunwoo Kim's entire presence had shifted during that phone call. Thank you for dinner, she said. And for Dr. Chun. And for everything. Hyunwoo Kim moved toward the door, then paused and turned back. Your car, he said. The blue Honda in the parking lot. It needs repairs. Maya flushed with embarrassment. The Honda was 15 years old with a transmission that slipped and brakes that squealed, but it was transportation she couldn't afford to replace. I know. I'm saving for repairs, but grandmother's medical expenses come first. Tomorrow someone will come to fix it. Don't argue with me about this. I can't let you pay for car repairs, Maya protested. You've already done too much. Hyunwoo Kim paused at the door, his hand on the handle, and looked back at her with those dark eyes that seemed to see straight through her defenses. Maya Johnson, he said, using her full name with the same formality he had shown since their first meeting. You work 3 jobs and attend nursing school while caring for a diabetic grandmother. You budget every dollar and still don't have enough for emergencies. You're exhausted, undernourished, and one crisis away from losing everything you've worked for. Maya stared at him, hearing her life described with uncomfortable accuracy. This isn't charity, Hyunwoo Kim continued. This is investment. You're going to be a nurse. Your grandmother raised you to be strong and capable. You deserve better than wondering if you can afford insulin or car repairs or food that isn't peanut butter sandwiches. He opened the door, then looked back one final time. Think about what you want your life to look like, he said. When you're ready to change it, call me. After he left, Maya sat in her kitchen surrounded by containers of Korean food that would feed her for 3 days, holding a business card that felt like a key to doors she hadn't known existed. Her coworkers had warned her about accepting help from strangers. Her nursing school friends had cautioned her about men who seemed too generous. Every piece of advice from women who cared about her safety said to cut contact and return to her manageable struggle. But as Maya checked on her grandmother and found her sleeping peacefully with normal breathing and healthy color, she wondered if safety was really about avoiding risks or about finally finding someone strong enough to help carry the weight she had been bearing alone for so long. The business card remained in her pocket, growing warm from her touch, representing possibilities that felt both terrifying and irresistible. Maya's carefully managed world crumbled completely when Dr. Chin delivered news that made every previous crisis seem manageable. Her grandmother needed immediate cardiac surgery that would cost $50,000, and insurance would cover less than half. Within hours, Hyunwoo Kim would offer her a solution that would secure her family's future while binding her to a world she barely understood. Maya sat in the cardiologist's office Thursday afternoon, listening to Dr. Martinez explain her grandmother's condition with the clinical precision that made terrible news sound almost manageable. Severe coronary artery blockage. 3 vessels affected. Surgery required within 2 weeks to prevent massive heart attack. The surgery itself would cost $38,000. Hospital stay, another $12,000. Postoperative care and cardiac rehabilitation, an additional $8,000. Total cost, $58,000. Insurance would cover $22,000 after deductibles and copays. Maya stared at the estimate sheet, her nursing training helping her understand the medical necessity, while her financial reality made the numbers feel like a death sentence. $36,000. She made $18,000 annually across 3 jobs. Her savings account held $417. Dr. Martinez continued explaining surgical procedures and recovery timelines, but Maya's mind had shifted into crisis calculation mode. Student loans already consumed 40% of her income. Rent, utilities, groceries, and her grandmother's current medications took another 50%. That left roughly $600 monthly for emergencies, transportation, and anything else life required. Even if she could qualify for a medical loan, the monthly payments would exceed her available income. Even if she dropped out of nursing school and worked full-time, she couldn't earn enough to cover surgery costs and living expenses. Even if she sold everything she owned, it wouldn't make a meaningful dent in the required amount. Maya thanked Dr. Martinez, scheduled the surgery for the earliest possible date, and walked to her car with an estimate sheet that felt like a document of surrender. She sat in the parking lot of the medical center, staring at her phone. Hyunwoo Kim's business card had become a familiar weight in her pocket over the past week, and she had found herself touching it during moments of stress like a talisman she wasn't ready to use. She dialed his number before she could think too carefully about the decision. "Maya Johnson," she said when he answered. "I need to see you." "Where are you?" Hyunwoo Kim asked without hesitation. "Riverside Medical Center. My grandmother needs surgery. I'll be there in 20 minutes. Stay where you are." Maya waited in her car, watching expensive vehicles navigate the medical center parking lot and trying to prepare for a conversation that felt like stepping off a cliff. Hyunwoo Kim arrived in a black sedan that looked like it belonged to someone important, driven by someone else who waited in the car while Hyunwoo Kim approached her Honda. He wore a dark blue suit that probably cost more than Maya's semester tuition, but he sat in her passenger seat without any indication that the contrast bothered him. His presence immediately made the small car feel smaller and more charged with the controlled intensity that seemed to follow him everywhere. "Tell me," he said simply. Maya handed him the surgical estimate. Hyunwoo Kim read it with the efficiency of someone accustomed to processing financial information quickly. "When is the surgery scheduled?" he asked. 2 weeks from today. Dr. Martinez says we can't wait longer without risking massive cardiac event." Hyunwoo Kim folded the estimate and handed it back to her. "This is not a problem," he said. Maya felt her throat tighten with emotion that she had been holding back since leaving the doctor's office. "It's an impossible problem," she corrected. "I don't have $36,000. I can't borrow $36,000. I can't earn $36,000 in 2 weeks or 2 years. Hyunwoo Kim studied her face with those dark, intelligent eyes that seemed to see straight through her careful composure. "I told you to call me when you were ready to change your life," he said. "Are you ready?" Maya nodded, not trusting her voice. "Then we need to have a formal conversation. Not in your car in a hospital parking lot. Can you leave your grandmother with someone tonight?" Maya thought of her neighbor Mrs. Park, a retired nurse who had offered to help during emergencies. "Yes, for a few hours. I'll pick you up at 7. We'll discuss terms properly." Maya spent the rest of the day arranging care for her grandmother and trying to prepare mentally for a conversation that felt like negotiating her future with someone she still didn't fully understand. She changed clothes 3 times, settling finally on her best dress and professional shoes, wanting to look capable and serious rather than desperate. Hyunwoo Kim arrived at 7 exactly in the same black sedan with the same silent driver. Maya had expected him to take her to a restaurant or office, but instead they drove to an upscale building in the financial district that looked like it housed law firms and investment companies. The elevator required a key card to access the top floor. When the doors opened, Maya stepped into a space that was clearly designed to impress. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the city. Leather furniture that looked like it belonged in a luxury hotel. Original artwork that probably cost more than Maya's annual income. "This is your office?" Maya asked. "One of them," Hyunwoo Kim replied. "Please sit." Maya chose a chair facing the window, partly because the view was spectacular and partly because it felt safer to have something beautiful to focus on during what was clearly going to be a serious conversation. Hyunwoo Kim sat across from her, his posture formal and his expression serious. The man who had shared dinner in her kitchen and talked about his grandmother was gone. In his place was someone who radiated authority and control. "Maya Johnson," he began, using her full name with the formality that characterized all his interactions with her. "You are 23 years old, a nursing student with 18 months remaining until graduation. You work 3 jobs totaling approximately 60 hours per week while maintaining a 3.8 GPA. You care for a diabetic grandmother who raised you after your parents died. Your current financial situation is unsustainable and becoming more precarious with each emergency." Maya nodded, hearing her life summarized with uncomfortable accuracy. "I am prepared to offer you a position that will solve your financial problems permanently while utilizing your medical training and natural capabilities," Hyunwoo Kim continued. "The terms are as follows." He reached into his jacket and pulled out a folder that he opened with careful precision. "Annual salary of $75,000, paid monthly. All tuition and educational expenses for nursing school paid in full. Medical expenses for your grandmother covered completely, including the upcoming surgery. Housing provided on my property with private quarters and full amenities. Transportation provided as needed. Maya felt her heart stop. $75,000 annually was more than 4 times her current income. Medical expenses covered meant no more choosing between medications and groceries. Housing provided meant no more rent payments that consumed half her earnings. What would I do for this money? She asked, her voice steadier than she felt. You would provide medical care for my associates when they require treatment that cannot be obtained through conventional channels, Hyunwoo Kim said. Gunshot wounds, knife injuries, conditions that cannot be reported to hospitals or police. You would maintain absolute silence about everything you see and hear. You would live on my property under my protection and follow my security protocols without question. Maya felt the room shift around her as the reality of what he was describing sank in. Medical care that couldn't be reported to police meant treating criminals. Associates who got shot and stabbed meant violent criminals. Living under his protection meant accepting that she needed protection from something dangerous. You're not an importer, she said quietly. I am many things, Hyunwoo Kim replied. Import and export is one legitimate aspect of my business operations. Other aspects are less conventional, but equally necessary. What other aspects? Maya asked, though she was beginning to understand. I enforce contracts and resolve disputes for people who cannot use traditional legal channels, he said. I ensure that agreements are honored and debts are paid. I protect people and assets when conventional security is insufficient. Maya stared at him, seeing him clearly for the first time. The expensive clothes, the controlled authority, the deference of others, the ability to solve any problem with a phone call. He wasn't just wealthy. He was powerful in ways that existed outside normal society. You're a criminal, she said. I am a businessman who operates in gray areas of commerce and conflict resolution, Hyunwoo Kim replied. Some of my activities are not technically legal, but they serve necessary functions in communities that exist beyond traditional law enforcement. Maya's mind raced through the implications of what he was offering. $75,000 to provide medical care for criminals. Financial security in exchange for becoming part of illegal activities. Her grandmother's life saved by accepting help from someone who violated laws for a living. What happens if I say no? She asked. Nothing, Hyunwoo Kim replied immediately. You return to your current situation. You find another way to pay for your grandmother's surgery, or you watch her die from lack of medical care. You continue working 3 jobs while attending nursing school until exhaustion or another crisis breaks you. I will not contact you again. What happens if I say yes and then change my mind? Maya asked. Hyunwoo Kim's expression became very still and very serious. That depends on how much you learn and what you do with that knowledge, he said. If you simply decide the arrangement doesn't suit you and leave quietly, you would be financially compensated and relocated safely with a recommendation that you never discuss your experiences. If you betray confidences or endanger my associates, the consequences would be severe and permanent. Maya felt fear crawl up her spine. Severe and permanent consequences meant death. She was sitting in a luxury office being offered financial security by someone who killed people who betrayed him. You would hurt me, she said. I would ensure that you could never hurt anyone I care about, Hyunwoo Kim replied. But Maya Johnson, look at me. She met his dark eyes and saw something there that hadn't been present during his formal presentation. Warmth. Genuine concern. The man who had saved her grandmother and brought her dinner. I have spent the past week watching you care for your grandmother while working yourself to exhaustion for $18,000 annually, he continued. You are intelligent, capable, and stronger than you realize. You have integrity and compassion that cannot be taught or faked. I am not offering you this position because I need another medical provider. I am offering it because I believe you deserve better than struggling alone. Maya felt tears threaten and forced them back. She had been struggling alone for so long that the offer of genuine help felt too good to be real. How long do I have to decide? She asked. Your grandmother's surgery is scheduled in 2 weeks, Hyunwoo Kim said. That gives you time to consider all aspects of this decision. But Maya Johnson, understand this clearly. If you accept my offer, you accept everything that comes with it. The protection, the security, the financial stability, and the moral complexity of providing medical care for people who live outside conventional law. Maya stared out the floor-to-ceiling windows at the city lights below, thinking about her grandmother's peaceful sleep and her own exhaustion and the mathematical impossibility of her current life. She thought about the pre-med courses she loved and the nursing career she dreamed of building. She thought about never again choosing between medications and groceries, never again calculating whether she could afford gas to get to work, never again lying awake at night wondering how she would pay for the next emergency. She thought about becoming part of a world where people got shot and stabbed regularly enough to require a private nurse. She thought about maintaining absolute silence about illegal activities and living under the protection of someone powerful enough to kill people who betrayed him. Maya Johnson looked across the elegant office at Hyunwoo Kim, seeing both the dangerous criminal and the man who had knelt beside her grandmother's bed with gentle competence. "I need to think about this," she said. "Of course," Hyunwoo Kim replied. "Take the time you need. But Maya Johnson, remember that thinking too long is a luxury your grandmother cannot afford." He was right, and they both knew it. In 2 weeks, her grandmother would either receive life-saving surgery or begin dying slowly from heart disease that could have been prevented. Maya could continue struggling with impossible mathematics, or she could accept help that came with moral complexity she had never imagined. As Hyunwoo Kim drove her home in silence, Maya realized that her decision had already been made the moment she called his number. Everything else was just her mind catching up to what her heart had already accepted. She was going to say yes. Maya's acceptance of Hyunwoo Kim's proposition transformed her life overnight from desperate struggle to protected luxury. But her first medical emergency, treating a gunshot wound in his pristine compound, forced her to understand that safety came with prices she was only beginning to comprehend. Maya had expected Hyunwoo Kim's property to be impressive, but nothing had prepared her for the reality of stepping through electronic gates into a world that existed beyond normal economic constraints. The compound occupied several acres in an exclusive district she had only seen from highways, surrounded by walls that looked decorative but felt substantial enough to stop anything short of military assault. The main house was a study in understated wealth, all clean lines and floor-to-ceiling windows that showcased carefully designed gardens and a view of the city that stretched to the horizon. Everything was pristine, expensive, and quietly intimidating in its perfection. Maya's quarters occupied the entire east wing, with a bedroom larger than her previous apartment, a private bathroom with marble surfaces and fixtures that belonged in luxury hotels, and a sitting area with medical equipment that rivaled anything she had seen in hospitals. Her clothes, transported from her old apartment by people she never met, looked lost in the enormous walk-in closet. She stood in her new bedroom 3 days after accepting Hyunwoo Kim's offer, trying to process the reality of sleeping in a space that probably cost more to furnish than she had earned in the past 2 years. The bed was larger than anything she had ever imagined needing, covered in linens that felt like silk against her fingers. The view from her window showed gardens that required full-time maintenance and a pool area that looked like something from architectural magazines. This was her home now, her refuge and her prison, depending on how she chose to think about it. Her grandmother's surgery had been scheduled for the following Monday at Riverside Medical Center's cardiac unit, with Dr. Martinez performing the procedure and Dr. Chun coordinating post-operative care. All expenses had been handled with phone calls that Maya wasn't privy to, as if $58,000 were the kind of problem that disappeared with proper arrangements. Maya was reviewing surgical preparation protocols when her phone buzzed with a text from Hyunwoo Kim. "Medical emergency in the East Study. Bring your supplies." Maya's heart hammered as she grabbed the medical kit that had been provided for exactly this purpose. This was what she had agreed to. This was why she was being paid $75,000 annually to live in luxury. Someone in Hyunwoo Kim's world had been hurt badly enough to require medical care that couldn't involve hospitals. The East Study was on the main floor of the house, past a corridor lined with artwork that Maya was beginning to recognize as original pieces by artists whose names she remembered from art history courses. She found Hyunwoo Kim standing beside a man who sat in a leather chair, bleeding through a shirt that had been expensive before bullets damaged it. Maya assessed the situation with the clinical efficiency that nursing school had drilled into her. Korean man, approximately 30, conscious and alert but pale from blood loss. 2 entry wounds visible in his left shoulder and upper arm. No exit wounds apparent, which meant the bullets were still inside. His breathing was steady and his pulse strong, suggesting no major organ damage or arterial bleeding. Maya approached the injured man with confidence that surprised her. In this moment, she wasn't Maya Johnson, the struggling nursing student. She was a medical professional with training and responsibility. "Sir, I'm Maya," she said calmly. "I'm going to examine your injuries and provide treatment. Can you tell me your name?" The man looked at Hyunwoo Kim, who nodded once. "Jin-Soo Park," the injured man said. "Someone was waiting outside my apartment building." Maya began cutting away his shirt to examine the wounds properly. 2 small caliber gunshots, probably. 22 caliber based on the entry size. The bullets had penetrated muscle and soft tissue without hitting bone or major blood vessels. Painful and concerning, but not immediately life-threatening. "Mr. Park, I need to clean these wounds and determine if the bullets require extraction," Maya said as she worked. "This will be uncomfortable, but necessary." She worked with steady competence, cleaning and examining the wounds while mentally calculating treatment options. The bullets were embedded in muscle tissue, but hadn't fragmented or caused major damage. With proper cleaning, antibiotic treatment, and monitoring, Jin-Soo Park would recover fully without permanent damage. Maya glanced up to find Hyunwoo Kim watching her work with an expression she couldn't read. Not surprise, exactly, but something like approval or satisfaction. "The bullets need to come out," Maya said. "I can do it here with local anesthetic, but it would be safer in a proper surgical environment." "No hospitals," Jin-Soo Park said immediately. "Too many questions." Maya nodded, understanding the reality of the world she had entered. She spent the next hour performing minor surgery in a study that had been transformed into a medical suite with equipment she was only now noticing. Surgical lights, monitoring equipment, and supplies that suggested this wasn't the first time medical procedures had been performed in this room. She extracted both bullets with careful precision, cleaned and sutured the wounds, and administered antibiotics that would prevent infection. Throughout the procedure, Hyunwoo Kim remained present but unobtrusive, occasionally handing her supplies, but otherwise allowing her to work without interference. When Maya finished, Jin-Soo Park's wounds were properly dressed, and his pain managed with prescription medication that had appeared from supplies she hadn't known existed. "Mr. Park will need monitoring for 48 hours to ensure no infection or complications," Maya told Hyunwoo Kim. "The wounds should heal cleanly if he follows proper care instructions." "Well done," Hyunwoo Kim said simply, but Maya heard genuine respect in his voice. After Jin-Soo Park was settled in a guest room with instructions for wound care and follow-up, Maya found herself alone with Hyunwoo Kim in the study that still showed evidence of the medical procedure. "This happens often," she asked. "Often enough that having proper medical care available is essential," Hyunwoo Kim replied. "You performed excellently under pressure." Maya felt pride mixed with unease. She had just performed surgery in someone's study to treat gunshot wounds that couldn't be reported to police. She had crossed a line that separated legal medical practice from participation in criminal activities. But Jin-Soo Park would heal properly because of her care. He wouldn't risk infection or permanent damage because he couldn't seek proper treatment. In this gray area between legal and illegal, she had used her training to help someone who needed it. Over the following weeks, Maya settled into a routine that felt both familiar and surreal. She continued attending nursing school, but now she drove to classes in a car that Hyunwoo Kim had provided, a reliable sedan that started immediately and didn't require constant anxiety about mechanical problems. Her tuition payments had been handled with the same efficiency as her grandmother's surgery, removing financial stress that had been a constant background noise in her life. Her days began with checking on her grandmother, whose recovery from cardiac surgery had been remarkably smooth. Dr. Chun visited twice weekly to monitor progress, and the older woman was regaining strength and energy that Maya hadn't seen in years. The relief of watching her grandmother heal properly, without financial constraints limiting care options, felt like a weight lifted from Maya's chest. Evenings in the compound revealed aspects of Hyunwoo Kim that Maya hadn't expected. He cooked with the same controlled precision that he applied to everything else, preparing Korean dishes that filled the kitchen with scents that reminded Maya how much she had been surviving on convenience foods rather than actually eating. She found him cooking dinner one Thursday evening, moving through the kitchen with efficient movements that spoke of long practice. "You don't have staff to cook?" Maya asked. "I prefer to cook for myself when possible," Hyunwoo Kim replied. "It's peaceful." Maya watched him prepare bulgogi and rice with vegetables, his movements careful and deliberate. This was not the intimidating businessman who commanded respect from criminals and handled emergencies with cold efficiency. This was someone who found solace in domestic tasks and took genuine pleasure in creating something nurturing. "My grandmother taught me to cook," he said without looking up from his preparation. She said that a man who could feed himself properly could take care of others. Maya felt her heart soften at this glimpse into his relationship with the woman who had raised him. "What was she like?" Maya asked. "Small but fierce," Hyunwoo Kim said, and Maya heard affection in his voice. "She worked as a seamstress, taking in piecework to support us after my parents died. Never complained, never let me see her worry, but I know she went without things so that I could have what I needed." He paused in his cooking, his expression becoming distant. "She wanted me to become a doctor or lawyer, something respectable and safe. Instead, I became someone who solves problems that doctors and lawyers cannot handle." Maya heard regret in his voice, understanding that his current life was not what his grandmother had envisioned for him. "She would be proud of you anyway," Maya said quietly. "You honor her by taking care of people." Hyunwoo Kim looked at her with those dark, intelligent eyes that always seemed to see more than she intended to reveal. "Is that what you think I do?" he asked. "Take care of people." Maya considered the question while watching him serve dinner with careful attention to presentation. She thought about Jin-Soo Park receiving professional medical care for gunshot wounds. She thought about her grandmother's successful surgery and her own tuition payments. She thought about the security and stability that had replaced financial anxiety in her daily life. "Yes," she said, "in complicated ways, but yes." They ate dinner together in comfortable conversation that felt domestic and peaceful despite the criminal context that surrounded their arrangement. Maya found herself relaxing in ways that she hadn't experienced since childhood, when security and care were things she could take for granted. After dinner, she studied for upcoming nursing exams while Hyunwoo Kim worked on laptop computers and handled phone calls that reminded her of the business aspects of his life that she was only beginning to understand. She heard him speaking in Korean, English, and what sounded like Japanese, managing details with the efficiency of someone coordinating complex operations across multiple time zones. Maya looked up from her pharmacology textbook one evening to find Hyunwoo Kim watching her study with an expression that looked almost fond. "What?" she asked. "You're different when you're studying," he said. "More relaxed. Like this is where you're supposed to be." Maya felt heat rise in her cheeks at the observation. She was more relaxed, she realized. The constant anxiety about money and emergencies had been replaced by focus on learning and growing rather than just surviving. "I can actually concentrate on learning instead of worrying about paying for textbooks," she admitted. "Good," Hyunwoo Kim said simply. "Education should be about curiosity and growth, not financial stress." Maya felt something shift in her chest, a warmth that had nothing to do with gratitude for his financial support and everything to do with the way he looked at her when he thought she wasn't paying attention. Like she mattered to him beyond the medical services she provided. 3 weeks into her new life, Maya was reading in her sitting area when her phone buzzed with an urgent message from Hyunwoo Kim. "Come to the main office immediately. Medical emergency." Maya grabbed her supplies and hurried through the house to find Hyunwoo Kim standing over a man who was unconscious on the office floor, bleeding from a head wound that looked serious. This time, the injured man required stabilization and immediate transport to a hospital regardless of the complications that might arise. Maya performed initial assessment and treatment while Hyunwoo Kim made arrangements that she didn't fully understand, but that resulted in ambulance transport and hospital admission under circumstances that avoided police involvement. After the emergency, Maya and Hyunwoo Kim sat in his office reviewing what had happened and discussing protocols for future medical crises. The conversation was professional and efficient, but Maya found herself watching his face and noting details that had nothing to do with medical procedures. The way he listened to her suggestions with genuine respect, The way he trusted her judgment about medical decisions without questioning her authority in areas where she had expertise. The way he looked at her when he thought she wasn't paying attention, with something in his expression that looked like wonder. Maya realized with a start that her feelings had shifted somewhere during the past month of sharing meals and comfortable conversations and watching him care for her grandmother's medical needs with gentle efficiency. What had begun as gratitude for his help had become something deeper and more complex. She was falling in love with a man who shot people for a living and had saved her family from financial disaster. She was developing feelings for someone dangerous and protective and unexpectedly tender who had given her security she had never imagined possible. Maya Johnson looked across the office at Hyunwoo Kim, seeing both the criminal who handled emergencies with controlled violence and the man who cooked dinner with careful attention and spoke about his grandmother with tender grief. This was her life now. This was the choice she had made. And despite the moral complexity and the dangerous context, Maya discovered that she had never felt safer or more cared for in her entire life. Maya's carefully protected world shattered completely when she realized the man following her from nursing school wasn't random chance, but a calculated threat designed to use her as leverage against Hyunwoo Kim, forcing her to understand that safety in his world required violence she had never imagined accepting. Maya first noticed the man in the gray sedan on a Tuesday afternoon as she left her pharmacology exam at City College. Nothing unusual initially, just another car in the parking lot, but something about the driver's stillness caught her attention. He sat too deliberately, watched too carefully, like someone waiting for something specific rather than someone killing time. She dismissed it as paranoia until she saw the same car 3 blocks from the compound gates that evening. Same license plate, same driver, same careful positioning that suggested surveillance rather than coincidence. Maya's nursing training had taught her to notice patterns and details that others might miss, and every instinct told her that being followed was not normal urban randomness. Maya mentioned it to Hyunwoo Kim over dinner, expecting him to reassure her that she was being overly cautious. Instead, his expression went very still and very cold. "Describe the car and the driver," he said, and something in his voice made Maya realize that her paranoia had been insufficient rather than excessive. She provided details with clinical precision: gray Toyota sedan, license plate starting with 7G4, Korean male driver, approximately 40 years old, black jacket, positioned to observe both her departure from school and arrival at the compound. Hyunwoo Kim pulled out his phone and made a call in rapid Korean, his voice carrying the cold authority that Maya had learned meant immediate action was required. The conversation lasted 3 minutes and ended with instructions that sounded very much like orders being given to people who were accustomed to following them without question. Maya watched his face transform from the gentle domestic man she had been sharing meals with into someone harder and more dangerous, someone who commanded respect through fear rather than affection. "Starting tomorrow, you don't drive yourself to school," Hyunwoo Kim said when he ended the call. "Minjun will drive you and remain nearby during classes. You don't go anywhere alone until this situation is resolved." "What situation?" Maya asked, though she was beginning to understand that being followed was a problem with implications she hadn't considered. "Someone is watching you to gather information about my routines and vulnerabilities," Hyunwoo Kim explained. "They want to understand how important you are to me and whether taking you would give them leverage to use against me." Maya felt ice settle in her stomach as the reality of her situation became clear. She wasn't just living in Hyunwoo Kim's world. She had become a target because of her connection to him. "Have you been threatened because of me?" she asked. "I am always threatened," Hyunwoo Kim replied. "But recently those threats have become more specific about using people I care about to influence my business decisions." Maya heard the phrase "people I care about" and felt her heart skip despite the fear that was growing stronger with each word of explanation. The next morning, Minjun arrived as promised, a quiet Korean man in his 30s who treated Maya with respectful deference, but whose presence made it clear that her protection required someone trained to handle violence. He drove a car with windows tinted dark enough to provide privacy and anonymity, and he carried himself with the alert stillness of someone prepared for immediate action. Maya attended her classes while trying to maintain normal routine, but knowing that someone was watching her movements turned every ordinary activity into potential danger. Walking across campus felt exposed. Sitting in lectures required constant awareness of exits and strangers. Studying in the library meant positioning herself where Minjun could maintain visual contact. On Thursday afternoon, Maya's world changed completely. She was walking from the nursing building to the parking area where Minjun waited when three men approached from different directions with the coordination of a planned operation. Maya's heart hammered as she recognized immediately that this was not random street crime, but something specifically directed at her. The man who had been following her in the gray sedan stepped directly into her path, while the other two flanked her movements toward the parking area. Maya felt terror freeze her thinking even as her nursing training kicked in with clinical assessment of her situation. Three men, mid-30s to early 40s, moving with purpose and coordination. No visible weapons, but body language suggesting preparedness for violence. Positioned to cut off escape routes and force compliance rather than immediate harm. Miss Johnson, the man from the gray sedan, said, his English accented but clear. You will come with us quietly. No one needs to be hurt if you cooperate. Maya's mouth went dry as she realized these men knew her name and had planned this encounter carefully enough to know her schedule and routine. I don't know what you want, Maya said, her voice steadier than she felt, but I'm not going anywhere with you. You will come with us, the man repeated, reaching toward her arm with movements that suggested he was prepared to use force if persuasion failed. The sound of car doors slamming echoed across the parking area as Minjun and two other men appeared with the speed and precision of professionals responding to exactly this kind of emergency. Maya had not seen them approaching, but suddenly the three men who had been cornering her were surrounded by people who looked significantly more dangerous and better prepared for violence. Maya recognized one of the men with Minjun as Jin-Soo Park, whose gunshot wounds she had treated weeks earlier. He moved without any sign of limitation from his injuries, and his presence made it clear that Hyunwoo Kim's security network extended far beyond what Maya had understood. The confrontation lasted less than 30 seconds. The men who had attempted to take Maya were efficiently subdued and removed from the parking area, with minimal noise and no attention from other students or campus security. Maya found herself in Minjun's car driving back to the compound while her hands shook with delayed reaction to how close she had come to being kidnapped. Hyunwoo Kim was waiting when they arrived, and the expression on his face made Maya understand that someone was going to pay severely for threatening her. Are you hurt? He asked, his hands moving over her face and arms with gentle efficiency to check for injury. No, Maya said. They didn't touch me. Minjun and Jin-Soo Park stopped them. Good, Hyunwoo Kim said, but his voice carried cold fury that made Maya glad she was not the target of his anger. What happens now? Maya asked. Now I remind certain people that threatening what belongs to me has consequences they should have considered more carefully, Hyunwoo Kim replied. Maya spent the evening in her quarters while Hyunwoo Kim handled what he described as business that required his personal attention. She tried to study but found herself listening for sounds that might indicate what kind of consequences he was implementing. Around midnight, Hyunwoo Kim knocked on her door and entered when she called for him to come in. He looked tired and somehow lighter, like someone who had resolved a problem that had been weighing on him. It's finished, he said simply. The people who threatened you no longer exist to threaten anyone. Maya stared at him, understanding what no longer exist meant and feeling her worldview shift to accommodate the reality that people had died because they had tried to kidnap her. You killed them, she said. I eliminated a threat to your safety, Hyunwoo Kim corrected. They made a choice to target someone under my protection. That choice has permanent consequences. Maya felt nausea mixed with relief as she processed what had happened. Men had died because they had threatened her. Violence had been done in her name and for her protection. She was safe because Hyunwoo Kim was willing and able to kill people who endangered her. I should feel guilty, she said quietly. I should be horrified that people died because of me. But you're not, Hyunwoo Kim observed, sitting on the edge of her bed with careful distance that respected her space while showing his concern. I'm grateful, Maya admitted, the words feeling strange but honest. I'm grateful that you protected me. I'm grateful that I'm safe. I should be horrified by violence, but instead I'm grateful that you're capable of it. Hyunwoo Kim studied her face with those dark, intelligent eyes that always seemed to see more than she intended to reveal. "That makes you stronger than I thought," he said, "and more suited to this life than either of us expected." Maya felt something shift between them, an acknowledgement of truths that neither had spoken before. "What life?" she asked. "What are we doing here, really?" Hyunwoo Kim was quiet for long enough that Maya wondered if he would answer. When he spoke, his voice carried emotion that she had never heard from him before. "I built my organization to ensure that no one could hurt people I care about," he said. "I acquired power and resources and the ability to eliminate threats because I failed to protect my grandmother when she needed me. For 5 years, I focused on control and security without having anyone to protect." He paused, looking at her with an expression that made her heart race. "Then you sent that text message to the wrong number, and suddenly I had someone to care about again. Someone whose safety mattered more than business or profit or maintaining distance from emotional complications." Maya felt tears threaten as she heard him describe feelings that matched what she had been experiencing but hadn't known how to articulate. "I care about you too," she said quietly. "More than I should. More than makes sense considering how we met and what your life involves." Hyunwoo Kim moved closer, close enough that she could see the controlled emotion in his eyes. "Maya Johnson," he said, using her full name with the formality that had characterized their relationship from the beginning. "You have become the most important thing in my world. Protecting you, caring for you, ensuring your safety and happiness. That is what gives my life meaning now." Maya felt her breath catch as he continued. "When I thought those men might take you, might hurt you, I realized that losing you would destroy me more completely than losing my grandmother did. You are not just someone I care about. You are someone I cannot live without." Maya reached out and touched his face, feeling the sharp line of his jaw and the warmth of his skin. "You're mine," he said, his voice rough with emotion. "Mine to protect, mine to care for, mine to love. I know that sounds possessive and dangerous, but it's the truth. You belong to me, and I belong to you in ways that have nothing to do with our business arrangement." "I'm yours," Maya agreed, feeling the rightness of the claim despite its intensity. "And you're mine, broken pieces and all." Hyunwoo Kim pulled her closer, close enough that she could feel his heartbeat against her chest. "Forever," he said against her lips. "No matter what complications arise or what threats we face, you are mine forever." Maya kissed him with all the emotion that had been building between them through weeks of shared meals and quiet conversations and growing trust. She kissed him with gratitude for his protection and acceptance of his darkness and love that had grown stronger than her fear of the world he inhabited. When they broke apart, Maya looked into his eyes and saw her future reflected there. Dangerous and protected, morally complex but emotionally certain. "I love you," she said simply. "I love the man who cooks dinner and talks about his grandmother with gentle grief. I love the man who eliminated threats to keep me safe. I love you completely, even though loving you means accepting violence and darkness that I never imagined being part of." "I love you more than my own life," Hyunwoo Kim replied. "You make me want to be better than what I am while accepting me exactly as I am." Maya pulled him down to kiss her again, sealing a commitment that had nothing to do with their original business arrangement and everything to do with choosing each other despite the complexity and danger that surrounded them. She had entered his world to save her grandmother's life. She was staying in his world because she had found her home in the arms of a dangerous man who loved her enough to kill for her protection and gentle enough to care for her grandmother with tender respect. Maya Johnson belonged to Hyunwoo Kim completely, and for the first time since accepting his proposition, she understood that her choice had never really been about money or security. It had always been about love. 6 months after the kidnapping attempt, Maya realized that true security meant more than physical protection when Hyunwoo Kim proposed marriage with traditional Korean ceremonies that honored both their cultures while legally binding their lives together in ways that would ensure her safety even if something happened to him. Maya's world had settled into rhythms that felt both extraordinary and surprisingly normal. The threats against her had been eliminated with the same decisive efficiency that characterized all of Hyunwoo Kim's business operations. Word had spread through networks. She was only beginning to understand that Maya Johnson was untouchable, that harming her would bring swift and permanent consequences from someone with both the resources and ruthlessness to follow through on such promises. Her grandmother's recovery had exceeded all medical expectations. Dr. Chin's follow-up visits showed cardiac function that had improved dramatically since the surgery, and the older woman had regained energy and vitality that Maya hadn't seen in years. More importantly, her grandmother had never learned the true source of the medical coverage that had saved her life, accepting Maya's explanation that she had received a nursing scholarship with comprehensive family medical benefits. Maya had completed her final semester at City College with grades that reflected her ability to focus on learning rather than financial survival. Pharmacology, pathophysiology, and clinical practice had become intellectual challenges rather than hurdles she needed to clear while working 3 jobs. Her nursing boards were scheduled for the following month, and she felt confident about a career she had almost been forced to abandon. But the most significant change was the way Hyunwoo Kim looked at her now when he thought she wasn't paying attention. The careful distance that had characterized their early interactions had been replaced by something warmer and more possessive, an expression that made it clear she had become essential to his emotional landscape in ways that went far beyond their original business arrangement. Maya was studying in her sitting area one Thursday evening when Hyunwoo Kim knocked on her door with the formal courtesy that he had maintained despite the evolution of their relationship. "May I speak with you?" he asked. "There is something important we need to discuss." Maya set aside her nursing review materials and followed him to the main study, the same room where Jin-Soo Park's gunshot wounds had been treated and where she had first understood the reality of Hyunwoo Kim's world. Tonight, however, the study had been transformed. Candles provided soft lighting that made the expensive furnishings look warm rather than intimidating. Fresh flowers filled crystal vases with scents that reminded Maya of the gardens visible through the floor-to-ceiling windows. Most striking, traditional Korean elements had been added: silk cushions, low table settings, and what looked like formal ceremony preparations. Hyunwoo Kim wore a traditional Korean hanbok in deep blue silk with intricate embroidery that suggested both formality and cultural significance. Maya had never seen him in anything other than expensive Western suits, and the traditional clothing revealed aspects of his heritage that he rarely displayed openly. "Maya Johnson," he said, using her full name with the formality that had characterized their relationship from their first meeting. "For 6 months, you have been part of my life in ways that have changed me completely. You came into my world to save your grandmother's life, but you have saved mine as well." Maya felt her heart race as she recognized the tone and setting that suggested this conversation would alter the foundation of their arrangement. "You have seen me at my most dangerous and my most vulnerable," Hyunwoo Kim continued. "You have accepted the violence required to protect what I value, while bringing light and humanity to a world that had become cold and focused only on power and control." He moved to the low table and picked up a small box covered in silk that Maya hadn't noticed among the ceremonial preparations. In Korean tradition, marriage is not just the joining of 2 individuals, but the joining of families and the creation of new lineages that honor the past while building toward the future, Hyunwoo Kim said. "I am asking you to become my wife, to create that future with me, and to allow me to protect and cherish you for the rest of our lives." Maya felt tears threaten as he opened the box to reveal a ring that managed to be both traditionally Korean and utterly stunning. The central stone was a perfect diamond surrounded by smaller gems arranged in patterns that suggested Korean design elements, set in platinum that caught the candlelight with elegant simplicity. "This ring belonged to my grandmother," Hyunwoo Kim said quietly. "She wore it for 47 years of marriage to my grandfather, through war and poverty and immigration and building a new life in a foreign country. She wanted it to go to the woman who would love me despite my flaws and help me become the man she hoped I could be." Maya looked at the ring and understood the weight of what he was offering. Not just marriage, but acceptance into a family lineage and cultural tradition that would bind them together with responsibilities and honors that went beyond personal love. "Hyunwoo Kim," she said, her voice thick with emotion. "When you first appeared at my door with insulin for my grandmother, I thought you were the answer to a desperate prayer. I never imagined that prayer was for you, not just for help, but for you specifically, for someone who would see my struggles and choose to carry them with me." She paused, looking at his face and seeing the careful control that covered vulnerability and hope. "Yes," Maya said simply. "Yes to marriage. Yes to becoming your wife. Yes to building a future that honors your grandmother's memory and creates something beautiful from the complicated way we found each other. Hyunwoo Kim slipped the ring onto her finger with movements that were careful and reverent. The fit was perfect, as if his grandmother's ring had been waiting for Maya's hand. Forever, he said, pulling her close enough to feel his heartbeat. Mine forever, in Korean tradition and American law and every way that matters. I'm yours, Maya agreed. Forever and completely. 2 weeks later, Maya sat in her grandmother's living room, watching the older woman examine the engagement ring with approval and curiosity. He's a good man, her grandmother said, turning Maya's hand to catch the light on the diamond. I can see it in the way he looks at you and the way he treats me with respect rather than tolerance. Maya had introduced Hyunwoo Kim as a successful businessman involved in international trade and logistics. The explanation covered his wealth and travel while avoiding specifics that her grandmother didn't need to understand. What mattered was that her grandmother had seen his gentleness with her medical needs and his obvious devotion to Maya. When is the wedding? Her grandmother asked. Next month, Maya replied. We want you to be completely recovered and strong enough to enjoy the celebration. Her grandmother smiled with satisfaction that reminded Maya of the woman who had raised her with fierce determination and unwavering love. Good. You deserve happiness, baby girl. You've worked so hard for so long, and now you've found someone who sees your worth and wants to protect it. Maya felt emotion threaten as she heard her grandmother's blessing on a relationship that had grown from desperation into love despite complexities that the older woman would never know. 3 weeks later, Maya walked across the stage at City College's nursing graduation ceremony, receiving her Bachelor of Science in Nursing with honors that reflected her ability to excel when financial stress no longer limited her focus. Hyunwoo Kim and her grandmother sat in the audience, watching her achievement with pride that made Maya feel like she had fulfilled promises to herself and everyone who had believed in her potential. The wedding took place 1 month after graduation in a ceremony that blended Korean and American traditions with elegant sophistication. Hyunwoo Kim had arranged for a traditional Korean pyebeak ceremony followed by an American reception that honored both cultures while creating something uniquely theirs. Maya wore a traditional Korean hanbok for the pyebeak ceremony, deep red silk with gold embroidery that made her feel like she was participating in rituals that connected her to centuries of Korean family traditions. The ceremony included formal bows to honor ancestors and family lineages, sharing of traditional foods that symbolized prosperity and fertility, and exchanges of gifts that represented the joining of two families. For the American reception, Maya changed into a wedding dress that had been created specifically for her, elegant white silk that managed to be both traditional and contemporary. The reception took place in the gardens of Hyunwoo Kim's compound, transformed for the evening into something that looked like a fairy tale setting. Maya danced with her new husband under lights strung through trees that had been carefully cultivated to create natural privacy and beauty. She danced with her grandmother, who had recovered enough strength to participate fully in the celebration. She accepted congratulations from guests who included people from Hyunwoo Kim's legitimate business operations, as well as associates whose presence reminded her of the complexity of the world she had entered. But most importantly, Maya felt the security and joy of being publicly claimed by someone who loved her completely while promising to protect her forever. 6 months after the wedding, Maya and Hyunwoo Kim established the Maya Kim Medical Clinic, a legitimate healthcare facility that served both conventional patients and provided discreet medical services for people who needed care without official documentation or police involvement. Maya's nursing license allowed her to practice legally while using her skills to help people who existed on the margins of society for various reasons. The clinic occupied a building that Hyunwoo Kim purchased and renovated to medical standards that exceeded most hospital facilities. Maya had input on every aspect of the design, creating a space that felt welcoming rather than clinical while maintaining the professional equipment and capabilities required for serious medical procedures. Dr. Chen joined the clinic as Maya's supervising physician, bringing her expertise and connections to create a medical practice that served both legitimate healthcare needs and the discrete requirements of Hyunwoo Kim's business operations. Maya found profound satisfaction in using her medical training to help people who needed care regardless of their legal status or ability to pay through conventional channels. She treated construction workers injured on job sites that didn't provide adequate insurance. She provided prenatal care for undocumented women who couldn't risk official medical records. She handled emergency medical situations for Hyunwoo Kim's associates with the same professional competence she brought to conventional patients. 1 year after their wedding, Maya stood in the kitchen of their home, watching Hyunwoo Kim prepare dinner with the same careful attention that he brought to everything he considered important. The man who commanded respect through fear in criminal networks chopped vegetables with precise movements while asking about her day at the clinic. Her grandmother lived in an apartment building that Hyunwoo Kim owned, in a unit that had been modified for accessibility and comfort. Professional home health aides ensured that she received proper care, but Maya visited daily to maintain the relationship that had motivated her original acceptance of Hyunwoo Kim's proposition. Maya's financial security had become so complete that she had stopped thinking about money as a source of stress or limitation. The clinic provided income that would have supported her independently, but Hyunwoo Kim's wealth meant that her professional work was based on fulfillment rather than necessity. Most importantly, Maya felt cherished and protected in ways that went far beyond physical safety. Hyunwoo Kim's devotion had proven consistent through daily demonstrations of care, consideration, and respect that made her feel valued not just as someone he loved, but as someone whose thoughts and opinions mattered to him. Maya looked across the kitchen at her husband, seeing both the dangerous man who eliminated threats without hesitation and the gentle man who remembered her preferences for tea and always ensured that fresh flowers filled their home. "What are you thinking about?" Hyunwoo Kim asked, noticing her attention. "How far we've traveled from that night, when I sent a desperate text to the wrong number," Maya replied. Hyunwoo Kim set down his knife and moved to where she stood, pulling her into his arms with the possessive gentleness that had become their normal interaction. "The right number," he corrected. "The text that brought you into my life went to exactly the right number at exactly the right time." Maya leaned against his chest, feeling the steady heartbeat that had become the rhythm of her security and happiness. She had walked into his world as a desperate nursing student with impossible financial problems and a grandmother whose medical needs exceeded her resources. She had accepted his proposition because survival required compromises that her younger self would never have imagined. But somewhere between treating gunshot wounds in his study and sharing quiet dinners in his kitchen, between accepting his protection and offering him love, Maya had discovered that the dangerous man who had appeared at her door was not just her salvation, but her home. Maya Kim looked around the kitchen where her husband was preparing dinner while asking about her day at their clinic, where her grandmother's health was monitored by the best medical care available, where her future was secured by love and protection that would last forever. She was no longer Maya Johnson, struggling alone with impossible mathematics and deferred dreams. She was Maya Kim, cherished wife of a dangerous man who had built his entire world around ensuring her safety and happiness. The transformation was complete. The scared young woman who had sent a desperate text message at 2 a.m. had become a confident professional whose future was secured by the absolute devotion of someone powerful enough to eliminate any threat to her well-being and gentle enough to cook her dinner while asking about her day. Maya had found her forever home in the arms of a man who loved her enough to kill for her protection and tender enough to honor the grandmother who had raised them both with fierce determination and unwavering love. She was his, completely and forever, and he was hers in return.